What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another FPL Transfer Talks video on the channel where we will be discussing all things to do with double game week 32. And of course, we are going to start off speaking on the Newcastle players. We do have here Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy and Tino Livramento. Now for me, if I was to pick any three Newcastle players for their double game week, I would personally go for, at this moment in time, Alexander Isak, Jacob Murphy and Livramento. Now, of course, Newcastle do have a really good double at home against Manchester United and at home against Crystal Palace. For me, I think it's a strong double. For me, I think we should all be looking to triple up on Newcastle. And if you are wildcarding this week, as I said, the three players I would go for is Isak, Murphy and Livramento. In terms of Anthony Gordon, right, if you do own Anthony Gordon, if you are like myself and you've got him in your FPL team and you don't know what to do with him, well, for me, I would hold on to Anthony Gordon. Of course, the most logical thing to do first and foremost is to wait for the press conferences, right? Let's wait until Friday. Let's wait to see what Eddie Howe has to say on the fitness of Anthony Gordon. And if he does if he declares Anthony Gordon not fit, then it probably is best to just replace Anthony Gordon with Jacob Murphy. It might seem like a sideways move, but if Anthony Gordon isn't looking fit to play for the double game week, then it just makes sense to do that, in my opinion. In terms of triple captain, right, because I know some people still do have their triple captain left, and I know that a lot of FPL managers are looking to use their triple captain chip on Alexander Isak for this double game week against Manchester United at home and Crystal Palace at home. Now, would I be looking to use the triple captain on Isak this double game week, knowing that he does seem to be carrying this ongoing groin injury? Honestly, my answer is yes. I would still look to be triple captaining Alexander Isak this week. Now look, I know Alexander Isak, right, his minutes have been reduced in the last few weeks. As I said, he does seem to be dealing with a groin injury. Against Leicester, he only got 71 minutes. However, I will say the game was over, right? The game was done and dusted, so it is no surprise that Isak did get subbed off. But he also did get subbed off against Brentford when the game was still close, right? So yeah, it's pretty clear that Isak is sort of dealing with this ongoing groin injury. However, I don't think it would be enough to make me not use my triple captain chip this week on Alexander Isak. I really just think, right, this is just the best opportunity for your triple captain chip. I mean, in terms of what I think will happen this week with Isak, I expect him to start both games, which is ultimately what you want, right? You want your players to start. I do expect him to start both games, and I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to get at least 2 goals across this double game week. And if he does get 2 goals across this double game week, you could be looking at 17, 18 points. And then if you've got your triple captain activated, that could be like, what, 51, 54 points altogether. So I still could see a relatively big score from Alexander Isak this week, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, for me, I would still look to triple captain him. We know that he's one of the most informed strikers in world football at the moment, and even with this groin injury that seems to be sort of bothering Isak a little bit, I still do think he's more than capable of getting goals in these fixtures. And also another thing I do want to point out, right, is when you look at sort of other potential opportunities to use your triple captain, for me, the options don't look that great. I think we're looking at, ideally you want to use your triple captain in a double game week. Well, that's for me anyway. You might be different. You might, not actually care whether you use your triple captain in a double or single. But for me, I always look at double game weeks as, the most potential for points when it comes to triple captain. So ideally you want to use it in another double game week. And look, nothing is confirmed yet, right? But it does look like the most likely scenario at the moment is that we'll have another double game week in game week 36. And once again, I just want to say, right, I don't know for sure, but at the moment, that is just what the general feeling is. So it all depends on the FA Cup results. But let's just say, right, that Man City beating Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup semi-final, they could potentially have a double in 36. But the thing is with this, right, is that it's all if, buts and maybes. And that's the problem I have. You don't know for sure that Man City are going to win, number one, and you don't know for sure that they're going to double in 36. So it is quite risky not just taking this opportunity that you've got at hand to use it on Alexander Isak. But I'd say, look, the next best opportunity would probably be in game week 36. If Man City beat Forest in the semi-final, which we can't guarantee, they'd have a double against Southampton away and Bournemouth at home. So maybe using the triple captain chip on Omar Marmoush, for example, could be a really, really good opportunity. But as I said, bro, you are just playing with fire. It's all if, buts and maybes. There is no absolutes and we don't know for sure what can happen or what will happen, right? So for me, I'd take the opportunity that you've got at hand. I just play what's in front of you, and I think I'd just use it on Alexander Isak, man. He's a world-class footballer, really, really good number 9. I think Newcastle are battling for top 4. We know that this is an important important these two games are really, really important for them. And with them being at home, I can just see them scoring goals. And as I said, bro, they want to get Champions League football, so I think they'll go all out, and I think they'll ultimately win both games and score lots of goals. So yeah, for me, if you've got that triple captainship left, I would definitely be using it on Alexander Isak. That is just my opinion. And in terms of his minutes, right, one last point I want to make, because I am sort of rambling here. I do actually think that if the game's not over, if the game's not done and dusted, and it's still quite close, I'd expect Isak to stay on the pitch. So yeah, and if the game is over and it is 3 or 4-0, more times than not, Isak will be involved with the goals, right? So for me, yeah, Isak is the one. And yeah, that is just my opinion on that. Now, since we are on the topic of Newcastle, I do quickly want to speak about the assistant manager chip. Now, if you are an FPL manager that has their assistant manager chip activated, like myself, number one, I'd say that obviously means you've only got 2 slots for a Newcastle spot. And if I was to pick 2 Newcastle players to go alongside the assistant manager, I'd actually go for Alexander Isak and Jacob Murphy. I prefer 2 attackers as opposed to Isak and 1 defender. That's just my opinion. You could go Isak and Livramento, but as I said, my personal preference would be Alexander Isak and Jacob Murphy. Also, Murphy is cooking right now, let's be honest. But yeah, so if you do have the assistant manager chip activated, I would actually go for Eddie Howe this week. Honestly, I really do believe Eddie Howe is the number 1 manager to use this week. If you do have the assistant manager chip activated, I'm going to go for him myself, because ultimately, quite frankly, I'll be honest, I see 2 out of 2 wins for Newcastle this week, and they of course have a double game week, so I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Howe gets around 19 to 21 points, right? I could see Newcastle beating Manchester United pretty comfortably. I think it's a mismatch. I think Newcastle are just a far superior team. As simple as that. They're going to win the midfield the midfield battle. They've got the quality up front. They've got this defensive solidity to keep us out. And as a Manchester United fan, I just have to be honest. So yeah, take it from me, guys. I support United. I love my club. But ultimately, you got to call a spade a spade. We are not that good. And I think in this sort of game, we will struggle a lot. We just don't have the players to beat Newcastle, in my opinion, to let alone get a draw, right? I just don't see it happening. So I think this will be a pretty comfortable win for Newcastle, especially with them being at home as well. I mean, the atmosphere is going to be crazy. I think we're just going to, yeah, we're going to get cooked. That's my honest opinion. So yeah, I don't see anything other than a win here for Newcastle. So it could be, you know, around 9 or 10 or 11 points for Eddie Howe. And then against Crystal Palace at home again, I just see another win. I do see another win. I actually think Crystal Palace do have more of a chance of getting a result from this game than Manchester United. But still, nonetheless, man, I just see Newcastle winning this game, again, with them being at home. So for me, I know there's no table bonus opportunity here with Eddie Howe. But honestly, you could be walking away from this double game week with 20 plus points from Eddie Howe, and for me that's a massive W. So yeah, if you are on assistant manager this week, I would more than I'd be going for Eddie Howe. Simple as that. Now, of course, there is also Oliver Glasner, for example. Man City away and Newcastle away, 2 table bonus opportunities. But for me, I just think, man, you know what? Of course, it's a table bonus for a reason, right? It's a table bonus for a reason. And all table bonus games are more or less a risk, right? And this is a massive risk. But I just think when you've got Eddie Howe here, who also has a double, who really does, for me anyway, from my point of view, I see, like I said, Newcastle getting 2 out of 2 wins and a minimum 19 to 20 pointer. It's hard for me to back Oliver Glasner in this double, because I just, like, I don't see Palace beating City at home, away from home. I can maybe see them getting a draw, right? That's not out of possibility. They certainly have the players to hurt Man City, and I think they certainly can get a draw. Now, a draw would probably add up to around 10 points or so, depending on what the score is. And then for me, again, if they were to get a draw here, again, they could walk away with 20 points, but I just don't see Palace getting a result away at St James's Park. I'm gonna be totally honest. So for me, I wouldn't really go for Glasner. But if you are on triple Newcastle already, then fair enough. Instead of using a transfer to take out a Newcastle player, maybe you go for Oliver Glasner instead, right? But yeah, for me, if you have the choice, go for Eddie Howe if you're an assistant manager. Obviously, it's only between Eddie Howe and Oliver Glasner. But yeah, for me, Eddie Howe is king. and I think he'll walk away with the most points from this double. All right, guys, so since we were speaking about Oliver Glasner, let's go ahead and speak about the Crystal Palace players. Now, as you guys know, Crystal Palace do not only have a double in Game Week 32, but also Game Week 33. So for me, it's very important that we look to bring in more Crystal Palace players and, well, for me, triple up on Crystal Palace. So if you are wildcarding or if you're just simply making transfers, I'd be definitely looking to bring in Crystal Palace players. Now, I'm not going to lie. I do want to start off by saying, right, this isn't the easiest double game weeks that they've got, right? It's actually not, right? They got Man City away, Newcastle away, Bournemouth at home, and Arsenal away. By no means is this an easy double game week. On paper, these are quite tough fixtures. However, I do think Palace have the ability and they've got the players to score goals in these fixtures, which is why I do believe going for triple Crystal Palace attack might be the way. That's my humble opinion, and I could be wrong. I am no FPL expert, but I myself am on triple Palace attack. I got Eze, Sarr, and big boy Jean-Philippe Mateta, and I honestly believe, right, especially if you are wildcarding. If you're not wildcarding, then you've probably already got your Crystal Palace players anyway. You've probably got maybe Munoz and 2 Palace attackers. Fine, keep it as it is, right? But if you are wildcarding, I still do believe going for triple Palace attack is the way, because look, these games, right, let's be real here, guys, right? First things first, how many clean sheets do we think Crystal Palace get in these fixtures? Man City away, Newcastle away, Bournemouth at home, and Arsenal away. For me, I don't see any clean sheets in these games. If there's a single game where they'll get a clean sheet, it's going to be Bournemouth at home. So I see a maximum of 1 clean sheet out of these 3 games, which is why for me, I don't like any of the defenders. And I know what you guys are saying, right? I know what you guys are going to say. You're going to say that Munoz has got the attacking threat, so yeah, you should just go for him. And I completely do understand that, right? Munoz, his attacking threat is absolutely sensational, bruv, right? Absolutely sensational. I cannot deny that, right? I mean, when you look at him recently, you know, he's got plenty of assists here in like the last 10 or the last 7 Premier League games. You know, 1 assist against Brentford, 1 assist against United, a goal against Fulham, an assist against Villa, a goal against Brighton. Like, Munoz does have a good attacking threat. So, fair enough, I do understand that, but for me, when I look at this double game week, as I said, I don't see the clean sheets, and first and foremost, for me, when I pick a defender, I want to pick them for clean sheets, and essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that, right, I see the Crystal Palace attackers score. Firstly, I see them scoring more and assisting more, getting more goals and assists than Munoz, right? Essentially, it's Munoz versus Sarr, or it's Munoz versus Eze, because I think big boy Jean-Philippe Mateta is non-negotiable in my opinion. I think you have to have him, right? So essentially, like I said, it's Munoz versus Sarr, Munoz versus Eze. And because I think there's no clean sheets, it's just simply a case of who is getting more goals, who is getting more assists. And I'll always favour the attackers over Munoz, right? Because they're actual attackers. They're in attacking areas a little bit more than someone like Munoz. Someone like Eze is more involved. Someone like Sarr is closer to goal in my opinion. So I just think that Sarr and Eze are going to get more goals and assists than Munoz, and I don't think Munoz will get any clean sheets. So therefore, I think Eze and Sarr are better picks than Daniel Munoz. That's my honest opinion. That's just the way I see it. Now, I could be wrong. As I said, I'm no FPL expert, but with that sort of mindset, with that sort of thinking, that leads me to believe, especially for this sort of double game week period in 32 and 33, going for triple Palace attack is the way. That's my honest opinion, and I know Sarr recently hasn't done well, right? Sarr's blanked in the last 2 games against Brighton and Southampton. However, I actually do think these games especially against City away and Newcastle away, I think Sarr could potentially do well in those games, because I think there will be very transitional games for Crystal Palace, and I think Sarr has got that explosiveness. Sarr has got that pace to really hurt teams on the counter. So there is an argument to be made that these games actually do suit someone like Ismaila Sarr a little bit more. So for me, I like Sarr as an option. I love Eze as an option. I love big boy Jean-Philippe Mateta as an option. And for me, I love triple Palace attack for this double game week. I think it is the way to go. And of course, like I said, right, I could be wrong. But that is just my opinion. That's just how I interpret these games and what I think will happen. So yeah, let me know what you guys do think of that. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings down below in the comments. So yeah, if you are on wildcard this week for 32, what's your plan? 2 Palace attackers and 1 defender, or triple Palace attack? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. All right, guys, so next up, we do have the Aston Villa players, and I do want to start off by saying I really think Aston Villa assets right now are a very, very tricky team to buy players from, right? Very, very tricky. Now, of course, they do have Champions League football at the moment. At the time of recording, they've got PSG home and away, of course, right? So it does make Aston Villa players a little bit hard to buy from at this current moment in time. But one thing I want to say, right, I actually like the Aston Villa fixtures. I think their fixtures are absolutely amazing. And they also do have another chance of possibly doubling again later on in the season. So they got Southampton away, Newcastle at home, City away, a blank, and then Fulham, and a possible double in 36, depending on the way the FA Cup results do go, right? If they beat Crystal Palace in the FA Cup semi-final, then there's a chance, or not confirmed, but there's a chance that they can have another double in 36. So I actually think Aston Villa players are actually pretty good. The only problem is, I feel like there's a lot of players that can be rotated, and no one is safe from rotation. Apart from this man here, in my opinion, Morgan Rogers. I think Morgan Rogers is probably the best Aston Villa player to buy because I think he's the one that you can trust the most to get those starts. However, I do want to say, even though I hold that opinion that Morgan Rogers is the safest and best Villa player to get, I don't think I would buy him this week. I don't think this week is the week to buy him because we know for sure, right, that he will start against PSG in the Champions League, right? And if Aston Villa are still if Aston Villa going into the second leg have a chance of beating PSG and making it through to the Champions League semi-final, there is an argument to be made that Morgan Rogers could be benched in this fixture against Southampton away from home. And I know we all think Morgan Rogers is immune from from being benched because it does seem like that. But honestly, I honestly do think because it's Southampton, I mean, Southampton are on course to be one of the worst teams in Premier League history. There is no need to play Morgan Rogers when you've got a big Champions League game in a few days later, right? And Aston Villa do have the squad depth. We saw them rotate against Nottingham Forest and they still managed to get a win. They still managed to put in a good performance in that game, right? So for me, I honestly think with Aston Villa, right, avoid their players for now. Wait till they play their second leg in the Champions League against PSG and then decide what player you want to go for in game week 33. Whether it's Rogers, well, Rogers will be my number one, right, for that double because I think he's most likely going to play back-to-back games. I do also like Marcus Rashford, Marcus Asensio, I'm not going to lie, but are they going to start? I just don't know. I just don't think that, like, yeah, they might start against Southampton if they don't start against PSG, but are they gonna start both games in the double against Newcastle and Man City away? I don't know, and you guys probably don't know either. And this is the thing. This is why I do find it hard to make a case to bring in the Villa players because ultimately you want players that are gonna start games. And the frustrating thing is Asensio and Rashford, to be fair, have a good rate of returns of goals and assists, but the problem is they just don't get the start. So for me, I just think, as I said, right, Rodgers is the one to go for. If you're wildcarding, I'd probably buy Rodgers now on wildcard, but I don't think I'd start him. I'd bench him. I'd buy him, but bench him, and then have him ready for game week 33. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's honestly what I would do. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it as that. Let me know what you guys are doing with Aston Villa down below in the comments. All right, guys, so finally we do have the Manchester City players. We've got Marmoush, Phil Foden, Savinho, and Gvardiol. Now, I want to start off by talking about Phil Foden first. Like, what to do with Phil Foden? Are you an FPL manager that has Phil Foden? And if you do have Phil Foden, what should you do? Now, I'm unfortunately one of those FPL managers that decided to bring in Phil Foden, and so far he's done nothing else but stink up the place, right? So with that being said, it begs the question, what should we do with this FPL asset? Should we keep him or should we get rid of him? Now for me, I think we should do nothing. I think we should hold him for now. Let's not react, right? Let's just chill, take a deep breath, and let's just wait and see what happens, right? Does he start against Crystal Palace? Firstly, is he even fully fit? We saw him limping after the game against Manchester United. But assuming he is fit, let's just see what he does against Crystal Palace and then move from there, right? Because I think if Phil Foden can start both games in the double game week against Everton away and Villa at home, I do think he can still be a relatively decent FPL asset. But that is a big if. And do we think Foden does start both games against in this double game week for 33? Well, if the answer is no, then you're probably more inclined to want him to take him out, to be honest with you guys. If you don't think Foden is going to start both games against Everton and Villa, then you're probably going to want to take him out. However, I do still think there is a decent chance. But what I do want to do is just wait to hear what Pep says in his press conference. I want to bench him for now, bench him in the next game against Crystal Palace, and just wait and see what happens, because other issues might pop up. I don't think we need to go ahead and sell him yet, because, City might even get an injury, for example. What if City get an injury in the Crystal Palace game? That means that, Foden is pretty much guaranteed to start both games in the double, right? So let's just wait and see for now. But yeah, he's not having a best season, and I'm not going to lie, you might feel the same, but I certainly do regret going for someone like Phil Foden. If I could rewind time, I would certainly get rid of him, but we're stuck with him now, so I think the best thing to do is just to wait and hold and reassess ahead of Game Week 33. Now, in terms of what sort of Man City players to go for if you are wildcarding this week, for me, it's got to be Marmoush, it's got to be Gvardiol, and then for that third Man City spot, I'd much rather go for a Man City midfielder or attacker, right? I don't think double Man City defense is a good idea at all. I don't think Man City defensively are good. I know they've got 2 clean sheets in their last 2 games, but that was against Manchester United and Leicester at home. It certainly isn't the hardest fixtures to get clean sheets in. And to be honest with you guys, Man United were pretty unlucky to not at least score 1 goal in that game. So yeah, for me, Man City's defense isn't good. So I'd look to go for double City attack and 1 City defender. So like I said, Marmoush, Gvardiol, and I'd probably go for Savinho, but it's really hard to really say what Man City attacker to go for, because who is going to start both games? Who do we see starting both games in this double? Who do we see starting against Crystal Palace? Will Savinho start the next 3 games? I couldn't say for sure. I really couldn't say for sure. I think Savinho is a very, very fun pick, and if he does start, he could be a really good asset, right? But he didn't start, he didn't play at all in the Manchester derby. So it is pretty tough, but I would still prefer Savinho over Foden. I have to be honest. So if you are wildcarding, I'd probably go Marmoush, Savinho, and Josko Gvardiol. That would probably be my favourite Man City trio. In terms of Phil Foden, I would just avoid him. I'm going to be honest. If you haven't bought him yet and you're wildcarding, I would avoid Phil Foden. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, that is my opinion on what to do with the Man City players. That's my opinion on who to buy. Of course, disclaimer, I am no expert, it's just my humble opinion. But with that being said, guys, I hope you did enjoy the video. That is going to be it for today. Yeah, make sure to smash a big thumbs up on the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. But yeah, it's been your boy FPL Ryan, and I'll catch you in the next one. But until then, I'm out. Peace.